Thanks, Stefan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know for me in the UK, it's still the morning. I'm Kieran Mulvey, a product owner for Quadri and NovaPoint UK. So I work with customers on implementing our tools on real life projects. Welcome to the session on effective workflows using Quadri's automation tool. So if you haven't seen the automation tool before, don't worry. We'll go into the basics through to a bit of detail, real life use cases. And we'll actually get it up, and I've got some demo videos too. And we'll finish it off with a Q&A. So let's start off from ground zero, the basics. What is the automation tool? We'll start with a challenge that we actually solve. Repetitive tasks. All right, sounds familiar. Manually checking objects for required properties, tedious workflows in order to actually get out a table view or a spreadsheet to then be checked, copying the same attributes over and over again and again between different object types, or needing to use the pset editor to manually add your information that all of a sudden when you update your import, it's all now gone and needs to be redone. Or perhaps even spending hours updating data from an external source. You've got a spreadsheet or a database on one screen, and then you've got your model and your objects on the other. So these tasks are absolutely critical for the quality of your data on your objects, but they take a lot of time away from real design and engineering work. So we can claw back time with some efficiencies using the automation tool. It automates those data management tasks for you by creating and running a custom rule on any given set of objects. It's fairly simple in the way that it operates. It's drag and drop components to query, filter, and perform actions. The underlying principle is if you find something, then do something with it. At the heart of it, it's almost like email filtering. Is it from this address? Does it have this kind of attachment? Then put it in this inbox, put it in spam, so on and so forth. It's the same thing, but with Quadri objects. So going through a super basic example of this, we start off with a query for our model, right? So in here, I've got a bridge design, and I've queried all of my abutments that I've got in here. And highlighted in red are all my abutments, the two of them. So it takes that filter and then it holds those objects that it's found in the object result. So I can see I've got my two abutments. Now I've got my objects that I want to work with. What am I going to do with that? So that's where the action comes in. This is where the power is. So I've used a very simple one, modify object, and all this does is I can input some data. So I want it to have this property. I want it to have my bridge material as concrete and my user-defined material type C32/40, so the strength of my concrete. These could have been any properties as well, and it also supports the generic property list too. So that's a very simple example of beginning to end. But we'll go into more detailed cases and you'll understand the power behind things when we go into these. Okay. So for context, this next section, I'm going to be talking about model maturity index and some visualizations behind that so we can really understand what's going on. Okay. But in short, 100 is effectively a sketch of the object all the way through to 500, which is the as-built of the object itself. And then in the image there, I've got a range of objects or road designs that are at different model maturity indexes or MMIs throughout the life cycle. So let's go in to see how we can interface with those model maturity index values using the automation tool. So here I've got open Quadri and I'm working in kind of a view of everything in my model. And I've changed my presentation view to see the MMI on my objects. And I can see I've got from 100 to 500, and then I've got a default one as well. So default is a catch-all at the end. If it doesn't have an MMI attribute, it will be displaying it in that bright purple. Meaning I've got a lot of objects that have no MMI at all. So if I were to select it and scroll down in my properties and just turn on all properties so I can see that it is absolutely empty, like so. Now, I'm going to use the automation tool to go and find all of these, my road objects or my traffic lanes that have got empty model maturity index values, and then give it a value of 100 so everything's been updated. So I've created an automation task. And I'm going and I'm using my dynamic query tool outside of the canvas here because I just want to run this rule on a specific part of my model rather than it having to filter the entire model at once for my use case, just because it's quicker and simpler for me. Now I can create myself the rule, give it a name that makes sense, and then here's the canvas. I've got different options for my queries and my actions and logic, so my and, my ors, and my nots. And I can start to build up quite a simple automation workflow here. So there's my object result. That's what stores the objects. Now I'm going to find the filter that I need, which I drag and drop, and I attach it to my object result. I select a checkbox there because I don't care about what object type I'm actually working with. I want it to work with all of them. And then I just input a kind of a placeholder for me, just a traffic lane. And that'll help me find the property. So I'm now going, do any of my objects not have a model maturity index value? So is null. So in that object result will be held, that will be holding all of my objects that don't have an MMI attribute or the majority of my purple objects in the view. Now I drag on my modify action, and this is what actually does the work itself. So I check the box again to make this work for all my object types. I then choose a placeholder for it. And then in the dialog at the bottom, this is where I actually input my values for what I want to work with. So there's my MMI. Go and choose the value that I want, hit OK, and then start to end the simple workflow. And now I choose that I want to run that specific rule, and I hit Run Rules. So it's going to be using my dynamic query, it's going to be using my filter in there, and then it's going to be performing the action to change kind of a certain set of things from purple to red, like we've seen just there. So that's a very quick and easy way to visualize exactly what we're doing. And you can go as complex as you like into the logic of that too. So that's the basic workflow, something that I thought of as an easy way to ease you into the automation tool. But let's go into use cases and real life use cases specifically. There's three main ones that we're going to look at today. So we're going to start off with CSV data enrichment. So you saw me now just manually inputting my MMI as 100 for all of those object types. However, we can connect to a CSV and do a lot of data processing at once. We'll move on to data validation, which is an extension of that on, okay, so I've now got all my attributes on my objects. How can I actually validate them rather than just visually seeing what color, for example? And then finally, we'll go on to manhole numbering. And that's quite a more advanced workflow where we go into, okay, where is my manhole along the alignment as it's connected to it? And then it numbers sequentially along the alignment and also vertically down from the manhole top. So let's start off with my CSV data enrichment. Let's embed some additional data into our Quadri model objects. Currently, I've got a road, a retaining wall, and a drainage network associated to my view here as well. And I've got some empty property set that I'd like to enrich using an external CSV. So we see here I've got pset underscore ADMM. For us here in the UK, this is the Asset Data Management Manual, and this could be 20 different property sets with the hundreds of associated properties that are needed for asset handover. So if I drag over my CSV that I've got here, I've got a very simple view of that. And we've all been in these spreadsheets that have got 10 different tabs with thousands and thousands of rows and who knows how many columns. But for my case, I'm going to simply use my Quadri object type as a key value. So it'll be checking all of my fill layers. It'll then be embedding all of this information into my properties. Okay. So let's go back into Quadri and start up an automation task. So I'll go into my modify, automation, give it a name. I can specify which objects in the model I want to work on. In this case, I only want to work on this specific subset, so I will. So search for my collection. as that'll be my most up-to-date view of everything. Go and search for my digital date and create new rule. My rule name, I'll do CSV properties and create rule. So under our filter type, generally we would only use this object query or perhaps location query. But since we're working with a CSV, we will use our CSV loop as well. So our object result, remember, this is what actually stores the result of a specific query. And we're going to attach that CSV file that I've got into this component here. So I can do that by going to my file name, hitting the three dots, going over to wherever it is. So I've got my digital day for my automation, and choose my, we can have a TXT or a CSV, and then you can choose which delimiter you want to use as well, and you can specify the encoding. So for my header row index, this is where I've got my column names. So if I go back into here, we can see that that's one. So I say header row index. I'll open this up as well so it's easier to see. Header row index is 1, and then my start index is 2, as that's where the data actually begins. I've got 9 columns in here, and my separator is a semicolon. Sometimes the separator might not work immediately, but just change your header row index, down to 0 and then back to 1 again, and it should refresh this filter column. So I'm going to be filtering by my object type. This could be another key value. This could be GUIDs perhaps as well. So I'm going to select that. Now in order to attach my CSV to my objects, I need to use the loop connector. And what this will do is it will loop through every row in my CSV, and it will kind of rerun the query and then the action that I've got. So now I need to go ahead and drag in my selected object type. So I drag that in, either drag a connector across, or I can hit the plus and it'll automatically connect it for me. So in here, I'll change my object ID's name. So if I deselect and select it again, object ID's name to Quadri object type. That is the column name that was in my CSV. So it's connected to this CSV. So it'll now query each object type row by row. Now if I go down and drag on a modify objects component and drag between the two, go ahead and change my action. Now I'm going to select update to all object types, and I'm just going to type in maybe manhole in here. Now there's a setting in here that we can use with a CSV file that means that you don't need to manually map. As previously you would have had to go in and you would have to say, okay, I want my piece of asset description, and then I need to map it over to there. But with the CSV now, we've got this additional checkbox, and what this will do is it will automatically read the column names for the properties. So all you need to do is just make sure that the name of your column is the same as what it is in Quadri, and it will find the attribute type for you. It will use it and input the property in there. So I can hit OK, select my rule, my CSV properties, and run the rule. And then it will go through our model. We can see visually things are flickering on and off as they're being updated. Now if I was to click on my retaining wall and show me only the attributes that are on it, I can see that I now have asset information associated to it. My embankment slope, my traffic lanes, and this could have been hundreds of properties associated to this as well. Okay, so that is the CSV data enrichment use case, and let's follow on from that directly and go into data validation. So this is something that will actually check to make sure that you have the required properties, and I link it up to Excel as well to make myself kind of a report using the process info dialog. So let's jump straight into this. Data validation within the automation tool. Oftentimes we may have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of objects that all require certain information or properties to be associated to them. This may be instruction or for asset handover. I know for us in the UK, when we hand over an asset, there's an awful lot of properties that need to be associated to the model and taken out as a shapefile. And for us, that's something called the ADMM, so Asset Data Management Manual. This could be hundreds of different properties and lots of different P-sets. I'm sure every country will have their own version of this. Every project may need specifics. Every client will be different. But at the end of the day, it's all the same, and it's the workflow we're focusing on. So I've got information associated to my traffic lanes, my pavement layers, my water and sewer network in here. And I've got some missing pieces of information. So I'm going to focus in on this property set here, ADMM P-set. So I can see in this retaining wall, for example, I've got an empty value where my asset geometry is. And if I were to click around on some other things, we can see that others have all the information. Some of them are quite bad like this. Now, we want to be able to understand and validate all of this information quickly and efficiently. And we can do this in different ways. So manually, of course, we can go through. We can always check the P-set editor as well, to actually see what information we have in there, so we can go and select all of our objects. So I could go into my dynamic query. I could choose the collection that has all of my objects in here. So I've got that collection. I can change the P-sets that I'm viewing. So I'll go and change that to my ADMM P-set. And then as I scroll through, we can see we've got all kinds of holes in here, an asset geometry, subclass, and as I go through, we can see it all in here. So I could go through that manually. I could also do this visually as well. So I've got a presentation set up here, and I've got a drawing rule set up. Let me cancel out of that and open into it. Here we are. So this is set up so that it will read all my attribution on my objects, and if it has all the correct attribution, make it green. If it doesn't, make it red. So if I go into my correct attribution and look at the conditions, it will make sure that I have all of these different properties. Do they exist? Yes. Okay, great. Make them green. If they don't, make them red. We can take this a step further as well, rather than going from the manual to the visual. But how can we get a spreadsheet out of this, perhaps, so I can see the differences there? We can do this using the automation tool. So I've got a validation automation rule set up. So we can go through, you can choose your filter as you always do. And then let me drag my automation rule onto the screen. Now in here, I've added in the filters, some logic, and my query. So the filters that I've used for this is my attribute comparison. So I've got that specific asset group set up. So if I type in ADMM, I can see that I've got my property set there with all my different types associated to this. And I've gone, okay, check all of these different properties. If any of them don't exist, if any of them are null, store them in my object result, and then give me a validation. So the object validation can be found under our object query actions, object validation. And if I alter what this does, you can add in a custom message to this, right? So everything that goes through this validation, it will be going into the process dialog. I can add in keywords. So in my case, I've started off by going object types name, and then does not have the required properties, ID, and then some kind of delimiter. I've used a semicolon, so that's quite a good one. And then I've inserted another keyword, the object's ID. And I do this because it's easy for me to parse this log file in Excel on the other side. So I can hit OK on that. I'm going to close out of there, and I'm going to hit Run Rules. So also go through and check my model, and my process info should be filled with errors now. And if I open this up, as I scroll through this, we can see we've got a lot of different objects that just don't have the correct information. So if I click on this random one, we can see that that doesn't have any of the information. If I can click on something like my base slab, perhaps, that's got a specific piece of information missing. So this is great to have here inside of the dialog, but how can we get this out into a spreadsheet that then I can use to validate against and perhaps allow me to rerun the CSV and add all this information back in? So in order to find out where exactly this is stored, I can go to %temp, %temp%, and this will take me to my temporary folder, that's where this information is stored. Okay, then in here I can type in tr and take me down to Trimble 27.0, which is this version of Quadri that I'm on. And then we're going to look for our Quadri user.log. So this is where the output of your process info goes. Yeah, so here we are. So what I've done is I have opened up an Excel document for myself, drag this in, and I've gone to data and I've got data from file from text/CSV. And I've gone and grabbed this information. So I can do all files and then choose my Quadri user.log and import. And this is where it's really important that I've used that delimiter. So I used a semicolon, so I can go in and say, use my semicolon as a delimiter, and then it will get me the ID for me. And this is just, you can use Power Query to do all of this as well. Feel free to reach out or ask any questions on this too. So I've got my 3 columns now, one for the object type, one for the message, and the other for the ID. And I can refresh all of this. So if I hit the refresh button, 619 rows loaded, and this is from that validation that I have done just now. So if I scroll down to the latest one, manhole with 210,690 as the code, if I go into Quadri here, I can see that that corroborates with this manhole 210,690. So then that allows you to kind of audit what data is in the model. Does it have the correct bits and pieces as needed? And then what you can do is you can go and grab a CSV, enrich it with the information there, run your data validation again, and then find out that everything goes green. So in my case, if I Okay, so that was data validation. Now let's move on to the manhole numbering side of things. This is where we get a little bit more advanced. So really try and switch on here if you've been snoozing a little bit to try and pay attention and understand the workflow that's going on here, but it's super powerful. Manhole numbering along an alignment using the automation tool. Oftentimes we may need to number our manholes sequentially along a run. So in this case, I've got a trench and I've just viewed my alignment as well as all of my manholes in 3D. So we've got all of the default naming that was brought across from NovaPoint. NovaPoint, again, this could have come from anywhere, this information, Civil 3D, Bentley Open Roads, any other software potentially as IFC that then we connect to this network or the alignment. So as an end goal here, what I'm looking for is to see my manholes numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along my alignment. And then within the manhole itself, so for example, this is number 5. I want my cover to be 5.1. I want my taper to be 5.2 and all the way down sequentially. This might be required for construction or perhaps asset data handover as well. On the left-hand side, I see the familiar structure of a manhole that was created using NovaPoint. Now, in my case, I've got the manhole is the kind of the parent here, and then below that I've got my base unit, I've got my manhole cover, and I've got my taper, and then within the base unit I've got the shaft, and I've got the slab as well. So I can begin by using the automation tool to get things started. So I'll go into my manhole numbering that I've created, and automation. Give it a name, and then I'm going to use the dynamic query here just to grab my manholes that I want. So I get my manholes, choose my rule set, create a new rule, numbering, create rule. Now, I'm going to start off by using my object result and I'm going to use select all. So what this is going to do is it's going to grab everything that I've got in my dynamic query. So all 51 objects, my manholes, my base slabs, base shafts, covers, and all. Now I'm doing this because I'm actually going to, when I use my numbering action, I'm only going to apply this to the manholes themselves. So I don't actually need to filter it specifically to the manholes because this won't apply to it anyway. So I'll start off by dragging on my numbering action. So this will select all objects in my dynamic query and start to number them. So let's go into numbering and change some options. So currently the method is running, and this will just number them using whatever arbitrary order they're in when they come into the model. We want to do along the direction of the road as they're all connected to the alignment of the network, and it will use that information intelligently. I like to overwrite existing numbers, so if there's any information in here or it gets updated, this automation rule will just ignore everything. Come back to that. The number result attribute type. So this is where I actually want my numbering to go. So in my case, I want manhole dot component for co-class. That could be any property that you like, of course, that we add this into. And I'm going to leave ignore object type unselected as I only want this to apply to my manholes. So now I'll hit OK. So if we quickly take a look at what that's going to result in, I'm expecting my manholes to be numbered 1 to n along my alignment here. So if I select my rule, run it. Now if I choose my first manhole, scroll down to component, I see that's 1. On my second one, I can see that is now 2, and it'll be the same for all the rest going through. So let's go and edit this in and go that level deeper. So I'm going to copy everything that I've just done there. Select it all, Control-C, Control-V. This is because now I want to do per manhole rather than along the entire network. Okay. So I'm going to use a new connector. This defines the order of actions. So it'll do my top set, my top workflow, then it'll move on to my bottom workflow. So it'll go manhole to manhole, and then within the manhole, this is what we're doing now. So I'm going to delete my connection between my numbering and my result, and I'm going to add in a new filter called sort the children. This is because my base shaft, my base unit, the slab, my covers, they're all children of that manhole object. So I'm going to connect that into the loop here. And I'm going to add in all of my different associations in this, right? So if I just hit cancel on that, we go back to our manhole. With our manhole selected, I can see that I've got all of these children within it. And they're also, those children objects also as properties within my manhole. So I can see I've got my base unit and my cover list as well in that. So I can choose all of those different children within this dialog. So I can start off by typing in manhole. And this will allow me to select any of my properties within my manhole that could have a child. So for me, I'm going to go for my base unit. So base unit being 1. I'll then go to taper list, as I know that that's one for my tapers. And then my cover list as well. Now within my base unit, I can see that I've also got my base shaft and my base slab. So I can go in here and type in base unit. This will allow me to access my base shaft and my base slab that are within that. So under my base unit, I can right click, add a child, and then do my base shaft, right click, add a child, and do my base slab. Now I've basically just recreated what I've got here in terms of the hierarchy of parents and children. This order matters as well. So I want my cover on the top, obviously, then down to my taper, my base unit, my shaft, and then my slab. And hit OK. I need to alter my numbering slightly, so the method this time is going to be running, as I want it to use the order Again, overwrite any existing numbers in case we update it. But this time I'm going to add a modifier option. So set parent value on the attribute in children. This is what will give me the one dot before. So my delimiter is going to be a dot. That can be whatever you want. And then the mother attribute for me will be manhole dot component. So that's where we'll get that from. And then this time I'm going to select ignore object type, because I'm going to be applying this number to my base unit, my manhole cover, my slab, or tape, or anything. So I don't care that it's the manhole object type. I want it to apply to everything. I could do the same thing for this, where I select any mother object too if I was doing lots of things at once. Keep the step as 1, and everything else is good to go. So now I hit OK, and if I run rule again now, and I go into select one of my manholes, choose this manhole, my component number is 5, and then I'm expecting now if I go to my cover, being at the top, this should be 5.1, like it is. I can also see on the left-hand side as well, if I go through my kind of construction of the manhole. I'll go to my base unit, so cover, 5.1, taper, 5.2, my base unit, so the overall base unit is 5.3, and the shaft is 5.4, and the slab is 5.5, and I will have done that along. I hope you caught that, the manhole numbering there. So final section to blast through, automating the automation. Everything that you've seen now in terms of the task that we create, that automation task, that is connected to our batch operations too, meaning that you can actually go and make a .bat file, and using the GUIDs of the task, you can run this using the Windows Task Scheduler. There's a session later on, D7, where my colleague Arian goes through this. Now, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Okay, thanks Kieran for the information, and we're a little bit short on time, but I stated the workflow guide for Automation Tool in the Q&A session, so you see it there if you want to look into it later after the presentations. It's important for you, so you still continue looking. I will end this broadcast, and we will continue within 2 minutes with Trimble, who will help us with the next presentation. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.